Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you had an awesome spring break, and I hope you're ready to pick up on the Civil War where we left off. So, this is going to be chapter 15, slide 16 through 20 on your chapter 15 PowerPoint. So, if you want to go ahead and grab that PowerPoint out and get it out, and we'll get rolling. So, we're going to open up to chapter 16, or excuse me, slide 16 today. So, when we open up slide 16, we should see a slide with a couple maps on it, and it says Civil War 1861 to 1862. So this section of our notes, we are going to be talking about the early years of the war, and particularly the battles that take place. If you take a look at the smaller map, the littlest square that's up top, that is actually going to show you one of the fronts of this war, which is going to be the war that's taking place in the northern South, if you will, in the areas of Virginia and Maryland. Basically along the border between the Confederacy and the Union. When we look on that tiny little map there, you kind of zoom in if you can, you're going to see really two different things labeled. The red labels are going to be your Confederate victories and your Confederate placements. And your blue little blotches are going to be the Union victories and the Union placements. Now, early years of the war here, we see 1861 to 1862. The Confederacy is going to have a ton of victories in the Northern War, if you will, in the Northern Front. Places like Antietam and some of the other northern battles. Now, a couple different reasons for this, okay? I mean, because it really doesn't make sense. The North has more factories, more ammunition, more soldiers, but what they were lacking is going to be leadership. A lot of the military generals, experienced military generals prior to the Civil War, people that fought in the Mexican-American War and other conflicts that had taken place right before, were primarily from the South. And so when the Southern states secede, that military leadership is going to secede with it, i.e., gentlemen like Robert E. Lee. And so, although the North is going to see an advantage in materials and people and other stuff like that, ultimately, we are going to see the North win because of things like strategy, placing their troops in the proper place, picking the right battle locations, outflanking was a big thing, and maneuvering troops to get victories. And so we see in the northern front of the Civil War a ton of Confederate victories in the first 2 years. I mean, you can see the numbers there. They were staggering. The South has a lot of success and shocks the North to the point where, I think it may come up later, Lincoln literally fires like 4 generals early on in the war because they were getting their butt kicked. The larger map, though, on the bottom is actually going to show us kind of the western front of this war. And the Western Front, remember, is fighting for the Mississippi, and that was essential for the Northern War aim. If they control the Mississippi, they can control Southern trade. Control Southern trade, you hurt them economically and make it more difficult for them to fight. And so we will see some more success for the North here out west. They will secure New Orleans, and then they will basically close around most of the Mississippi River. One big sticking point, though, is going to be Vicksburg. The Confederates will control Vicksburg, Mississippi, which was basically a giant fortress along the Mississippi River, and they will use that as leverage to kind of keep the river at least semi-open. But the North will see a little bit more success out west comparatively to the northern campaigns. All right, we are going to move on to slide 17 here. Now, as we bring up slide 17, this is actually going to be a ginormous northern victory, but it is not going to happen on the battlefront. This one is actually going to come in diplomatic negotiations. Now, the South, they're not stupid. They realize that, hey, we've got some victories here, but we don't have money, a lot of money. Our trade has become an issue because of the blockade, and essentially we need help economically. So they will turn to Europe, or at least they'll try to turn to Europe. They will send out diplomats to both France and England in a hope that France and England will see this as an opportunity to maybe get access to cheap southern cotton or other trade goods, and will come in and help them in the war front. But it does not go to the South's advantage here. England is going to basically declare the South neutral. That's what that belligerent rights means. It's kind of a weird term, but it basically means that a country will be deemed as neutral. And that essentially England is saying, hey, look, Confederacy, we think you're a country, we'll trade with you, but we are not going to send troops to aid you. All right, we are not going to send in English troops to go fight alongside the South. Even more importantly, it also meant this belligerent neutrality also meant that England was not going to send warships to try to break the northern blockade of the South. And that is the main point. The South has no navy, or very little navy. And so that was the huge advantage of the North in the early years of the war. They are basically got a stranglehold on southern ports to the point where southern cotton can't go in or out, and their trade is slowing. They're not making money, their plantations are failing, so on and so forth. And so the southern hope is that England is going to send in warships, break open that blockade, and they'll be able to trade again. The problem is, yet again, England says, look, we'll trade with you, but you got to get the stuff to us. We're not going to break through that blockade. And that really just wasn't a possibility for the South. Historians feel that a lot of this actually had to do with slavery. England, you got to remember, has outlawed slavery at this point, and there were many people that basically felt England was kind of being hands off. Like they felt if they had supported directly the South, it was essentially them supporting slavery, and that was not, a look that England wanted during this time period, and so they basically stay hands off. What they do say, though, is that if the South can win independency, if they can win the war, that England would be more than happy to trade and recognize them as a nation. So, the South could be kind of happy about that, but it is not the help that they're looking for. The diplomats that go to France, they actually get an interesting response. France basically says, look, we're not jumping into this if England's not jumping into this. Yet again, we don't want to be the country that seemed to be supporting slavery. And so if England comes in and helps you, then France will come in and help you. But until that point, France is basically sitting this one out. And so King Cotton, yet again, even though cotton was a major export and a lot of countries relied on it, that need for cotton did not outweigh or push countries into actually defending the South. So if we go to slide 18 here, we got a short one. Yet again, the North has not had a lot of success, 1861 to 1862. And so the North, by 1863, is becoming more desperate. Lincoln is becoming more angry, if you will. And so he will become more radical in his views of how to win the war. They will start to implement a lot of assets of total war, burning farms, burning cotton fields, destroying railroad lines, essentially becoming more militaristic towards the civilians of the South, trying to break that will to win. By 1863, it starts to be effective. This starts to break the Southern will to win. It starts to make Southern soldiers leave the front to go defend their homes because they were in danger of being destroyed. And so we do start to see a decline by 1863 in the Southern victories, although the Southern resistance still does continue, as it says there. The war doesn't end. You still see a strong will of many Southerners to fight. But by 1863, their ability to outlast the North is starting to wane. All right? Now, another big factor that is going to lend to this is going to be the issue of emancipation. Early years of the war, Lincoln has basically been this is slide 19, I believe. So we've moved on to slide 19. Lincoln has basically been kind of hands-off with the issue of slavery at this point. He doesn't want to anger the border states. He doesn't want to push some of his allies out. But really, by the end of 1862, that desperation is setting in that we just talked about, and the losses at Antietam, which was a major butt-kicking for the North. Essentially, he will issue a preliminary emancipation proclamation that basically says if the South surrenders within 100 days, or they will lose their slaves. Essentially, if you do not surrender in the next 100 days, I'm going to issue a proclamation ending slavery in those rebelling territories. Flash forward those 100 days. Obviously, the rebellion is still taking place. So we get January 1st, 1863. Lincoln is going to issue the formal Emancipation Proclamation, which is key to note here that it says that it only frees the slaves in the rebelling states. So the border states such as Maryland, Delaware, Kentucky, so on and so forth, they were able to keep their slaves. But in the rebelling states such as, say, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, whatever it may be, we see basically full emancipation that is taking place, and those slaves are essentially deemed free from a northern perspective. And so what we see is a mass exodus of African Americans north. Once this takes place, once this proclamation goes through, it's posted, it becomes public. African Americans get word that you're now free, considered by the northern government. And so literally we see thousands and thousands and thousands of previously enslaved people essentially just heading north, getting the heck out of Dodge, going to where they have a possibility of being free. And where this is critical for the South is essentially this further cripples the Southern economy. You have the blockade, which was stopping a vast majority of the trade. Now you have essentially slowing the production of Southern products from within, because that slave labor that they had relied on for so long is now gone. And so it's really an economic attack from within. Now, we are going to go on our last slide for today, which is going to be slide 20. So just make sure I got the right one there. All right, so what we see with African Americans as they do go north is that the North is going to view them as basically an untapped asset for the war. We will see 200,000 African American Union troops that are going to join. Many other they're either going to join the army or they're going to join labor efforts in the North, go work in factories or production means for the war. Lincoln is going to take this as an opportunity to push further black rights within the Union or within northern states. He organizes governments in conquered southern states to abolish slavery. Their new requirement to join the country after they've been conquered was to basically get rid of slavery. Maryland and Missouri abolished slavery, which was a huge move following this. And by January 31st, 1865, we do end up with the 13th Amendment, which we will talk about later on, but that is the amendment that ends slavery at the conclusion of the war. And so we do see Lincoln start to radicalize and push towards the end of slavery, which was nice, but in many ways it was because of selfishness as a necessity to try to win the war and cripple the Southern economy. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. That was our 5 slides. I'm going to send out, along with this, a video today on the early battles of the war, if you want to check that out. And then also, guys, tomorrow you're going to get document with a hippo. Don't forget to do your hippo on the Emancipation Proclamation. All right. So anyway, enjoy yourselves, guys. I'll talk to you later. Have a great week, and I'll see you. Mr. Companion out. See you later. Bye.